Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Crowd Chatter Podcast. And so today we are going to go over the NFL Draft. The draft, of course, has already happened. It happened this weekend, and so today I'm gonna be just going over the draft classes. So that's pretty much just going over all the teams, who they drafted. What I think of it, and then at the end of when I go over their class, I'll give it a grade, and I'll break this up by conference. So first, I shall do the AFC, and then next will be the NFC. So we will start in of course, in the NFC, and I believe that means that we will start. And I'll go from the top to the bottom. So I'll just go by the standings. And so we'll start with the Bills draft class. Now the Bills, I don't know why they never say they need a running back because honestly, they really need some. They did sign a couple running backs, but they still could have used one. First pick though was Dalton Kincaid out of Utah, decent tight end. I guess they'll have him along with Dawson Knox. I don't know why they need both, but Dalton Kincaid was their first round pick. Their next was Osiris Torrance out of Florida. Then you have Dorian Williams, Justin Shorter from Florida, transfer from Penn State, along with the guard from Ole Miss, and then Alex Austin out of Oregon State. Decent overall team, but this or I'm sorry, not team, draft class. But this is a Buffalo team that you know, overall I think the class is okay. I'll give it a B minus. That's kind of what my average grade will be. Is like a is a B minus C plus. I'll give it a B minus because they got some decent players, but I think the real need still is the running back spot, and they still do need a defensive tackle. Um, but overall, not terrible class for Buffalo. Next is the Miami Dolphins. They of course lost their first round pick due to what was it? Due to violations of COVID, I think. So they had to, or maybe it was either that or it was all the raw stuff, and so they had to forfeit their first round pick, but they still got a very good player in the second round in Cam Smith. That's a good second round pick, good corner out of South Carolina. They also got themselves a solid running back in Devon Achane out of Texas A&M. Solid running back to pair him along with Jeff Wilson and Raheem Mostert. Overall, what they got was pretty solid, but they still needed. They only had 4 picks, so not a lot to work with. I'll give them a B plus because with the guys of which they had, they did a solid job. So I give Miami a B plus. Not terrible. And next is we'll do the New England Patriots next. They did a solid job. They actually this time drafted players of which people have heard of. So that's an improvement on New England's part. And their first pick was a really good pick. They got Christian Gonzalez, corner out of Oregon. Corner was a big need for them. They really did need some. They really needed some secondary players. They went and got Christian Gonzalez, big time pick for them. A great pick. They didn't pick a guy who nobody has heard of. They actually picked a guy who was supposed to be top 10, but he fell to 17. Outstanding job by New England, Bill Belichick. And then in the second round, you get Keon White, a good defensive end out of Georgia Tech. Um, he's a bigger guy, so good chance that maybe he slides into the defensive tackle spot, of which is another need for him. Then they get a linebacker from Sacramento State. I have no idea who that is, so I wouldn't be able to tell you. Then you got Jake Andrews, a kicker out of Maryland. I think that was kind of high for a kicker. Although there was another kicker that went even earlier than that, so I guess maybe not. And then you see the other picks here. They had a lot of draft picks actually, and in one of them they got Spartan transfer from Georgia, Amir Speed. They also picked Michigan State's punter. A lot of draft picks for them. They did the most with them. They did the most with their top picks. That's what you always want to do. I'll give New England an A minus. Solid draft. They still could have gotten an offensive tackle, but they did not do that. They got a couple guards though. But overall, and they also got a good receiver. So this is a good draft. I like what they got. Solid overall. Nothing to complain about here. Overall, they did what they needed to do, and they did a good job at it. Next, we have the New York Jets. Now, I don't think much really matters for the Jets of which they got from the draft because, well, they got Aaron Rodgers. So, what do they care what they're going to be drafting in what they're going to be taking in the NFL draft? I don't think there's really much of any concern of I think all the Jets care about is they got Aaron Rodgers. That's all they want to know. Will we get Aaron Rodgers? Yes, great. I don't care who we draft. But in the actual draft itself, they got Will McDonald out of Iowa State, decent linebacker. They got a good center from Wisconsin. They needed a center. They got one. And then they got some shots in the dark after the Pittsburgh running back Israel Abanikanda is a decent player. Overall, they did a decent job. I give them a B because the draft really was not the problem for the Jets. The problem was, will we get Aaron Rodgers? They did, and they no longer need a QB anymore, and that is the most important thing for them. So we now go on to the next division of the AFC North, and we start with the Cincinnati Bengals. They're the first one out of this division, and their first pick was Miles Murphy from Clemson, which is a very good player. I really honestly love the Bengals draft. As first pick, like I said, was Miles Murphy, solid edge rusher. They can pair him along with Trey Hendrickson, along with their other edge rusher. I forget his name, but he's very good. Also, they get a big time corner of which they desperately needed in DJ Turner. Also get Jordan Battle. That's a good safety from Alabama. Charlie Jones, solid receiver. Chase Brown's a very good depth running back. Awesome draft pick for them. And then they also got Brad Robbins as a punter. Hey, Brad Robbins. But this is a very, very good class. Their first 5 picks, I love all of them. These are all very good players. Miles Murphy, DJ Turner, both could be day one contributors. Chase Brown's a great depth player to always have, especially at running back when they already have Joe Mixon, but I don't really know. They already have Mixon there, but Chase Brown very good in college, could be very good in the pros as well. Charlie Jones is another good depth piece, a receiver, great player, and then Jordan Battle's a nice player to have as well. I like the Cincinnati draft class overall, very very good. Next, we have the Baltimore Ravens, their draft class. Baltimore's draft class, pretty solid. Really, most people just care about their first round pick, which was what they desperately need in a receiver. Now, there are other receivers on the board I would have taken over Zay Flowers, but it's a receiver nonetheless. He kind of just looks like a Hollywood Brown 2.0, but that did work well with Lamar Jackson, so maybe this works well too. Of course, the Ravens also got Lamar to finally sign. he is now in Baltimore, and he will be there for a while, so that's really also all they cared about. They also did a good job drafting Trenton Simpson, linebacker out of Clemson, got him late. He was supposed to go a lot earlier. I really loved their draft class from last season. This one's pretty good as well. Actually, did I grade Cincinnati's? I think I actually forgot to grade Cincinnati's. Well, it's an A. I like the Cincinnati draft class a lot. As for Baltimore, their draft class overall, their first two picks are exactly what they need. I give them an A minus. Because I'm not a Zay Flowers guy, but it is a position of need, and Trenton Simpson's a great pick late, and of course the other picks are all just kind of shots in the dark. Now Pittsburgh's way over here, but since Cleveland's right here, I will do them next, and they of course have gone all in on. They of course went all in on Deshaun Watson, so a lot of their picks are no more. But their first pick was in the third round. They traded up to get a good receiver and Cedric Tillman out of Tennessee. Now there are two very good receivers out of Tennessee. One was Jalen Hyatt, the other was Cedric Tillman. One guy was the guy the one season. The other guy took over when Hyatt took over when Tillman got hurt. They're both great receivers. They get the Browns get Tillman, who's a big body as well. They also get a good defensive tackle out of Baylor. They didn't have many high picks. They got DTR as well. They didn't have much of any high picks to work with, but what they did have, they did well with. I give the Browns an A minus, mostly because they sent everything for Watson and it hasn't worked. And the guys of which they have are good picks, but none of them are first rounders. So A minus, because they did what they could with what they had, which is what you want to do. And then you have the Pittsburgh Steelers, who I think knocked it out of the park with their picks. Their draft class is, yeah, very good. Their first pick was Broderick Jones at tackle. They desperately needed offensive line to help protect Kenny Pickett. They get Broderick Jones to do that. Great draft pick there. And then in the next, with the first pick in the first round, in the trade of which they trade with the Bears and gave them Chase Claypool, they take Joey Porter Jr., whose dad played for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Also, he's from Penn State, keeps him home. That's a great draft pick. They also get Keanu Benton, a good defensive tackle from Wisconsin, big guy as well. They also, later in the third round, I guess there were injury concerns about him, but they get Darnell Washington, who is an outstanding tight end, and they can now run two tight end sets with Pat Fryermuth and Darnell Washington. That is terrifying. Great 1-2 combo at tight end. And if they really do decide to run two tight end sets with those guys, watch out. Those are two very good tight ends. Really excited to see what the Steelers do with both of them. And then they get Nick Herbig. I don't know how you pronounce that, but they got linebacker out of Wisconsin and two other picks. I love their first four. I'm giving them. I almost want to give them an A plus, but I want to save that for like the draft classes that I can't deny are fantastic. So I'll give. I'm giving Pittsburgh a very solid A, borderline A plus. Very, very good draft class of which they got. They get protection for. They prioritize some protection for Kenny Pickett. They get the son of a legend who had played for him, and they get a outstanding tight end uh, who is a very good player. I guess there's some injury concerns, but that is an outstanding player and an outstanding pick for the Steelers. They knocked it out of the park with that one. So now we go to the AFC South and the first team. They're all pretty much right here except for over there. So we'll go to the Jacksonville Jaguars, who who are the ones who won a division last year on a very nice run at the end of the season, and they made some solid picks. They really covered all their bases. Kind of late with some of them, but they covered all their bases. They got a tackle out of Oklahoma, and Anton Harrison. I guess Cam Robinson could be suspended to start the year, so Harrison could step in as the guy for him while he's out. Brenton Strange is a solid tight end. They now have him and Evan Engram. Brenton Strange, good tight end. Tank Bigsby is a big physical is a very good running back. Played very well for Auburn. He'll be nice to have on the team as a depth piece. And then you got Ventrell Miller, Tyler Lacey, Yazir Abdullah, Antonio Johnson picked late as a nice pick. Parker Washington, I love Parker Washington. I mean, he got drafted pretty low, but I love Parker Washington. That's a good player. Overall, I like the Jags class. I give it a B plus. Um, Overall, not too shabby. Overall, I mean, I like it. I think it's a solid class. I think that it's definitely something that Jacksonville can work with. Then we have the Indianapolis Colts coming up next. Um, and their team was really focused on who were they drafting at number 4. What quarterback would they take? Who are they going to get? And how good will they be? They ended up drafting Anthony Richardson at number 4. He is a very polarizing prospect because he is obviously a fan. He has shown how good that he can be, but he's also shown that he can really struggle. So he has potential through the stinking roof. I mean, the guy could be a Pro Bowler in the NFL. He's that good. He's that talented. I shouldn't say he's that good. He's talented enough that he could be a Pro Bowl, a perennial Pro Bowler, pretty much. But whether or not he reaches that potential is another story. Then they get from Kansas State Julius Brents, solid corner. They also got Josh Downs from North Carolina, very good receiver. Like that pick for him. They get him in the 3rd round. He can pretty much line up alongside Michael Pittman Jr. now. Another option for Anthony Richardson. Josh Downs, a good receiver. He's a bit on the smaller side, but he was pretty good for North Carolina. And then their other picks, they got tackle. Uh, this was a combine warrior. Don't know how to pronounce his name, but he did very well in the combine. Solid pick for them. They also have some other picks in here, all of which, are just kind of shots in the dark. Evan Hall, a running back from Northwestern as well. But the Indy draft class is all surrounded around a QB. They got a QB. We'll see how it works. I give them, B plus. They got their quarterback, and that was really the only thing that people really cared about for the Colts. So they get Anthony Richardson. We'll see how he works. Next, we have the Houston Texans. Now, all the teams in this division pretty much need QBs except the Jags. So all these teams pretty much drafted a quarterback, and Houston was another one that desperately needed QB. And they did, and there were questions whether or not they would actually take a quarterback at number 2, and if they would pass for somebody else. They did not. They took C.J. Stroud with number 2. They got their quarterback. And then they shocked everybody by making a huge trade to go and get Will Anderson, the top defensive player, at number 3. So, very polarizing move there, a very aggressive move as well. Will Anderson is a very good player. He's a very good linebacker. But Houston gave up a pretty sizable chunk of picks, including a first rounder next year, to the Arizona Cardinals to go and get Anderson. So that is a very, very aggressive trade. He is very good, so we'll see how it works. But that is a very aggressive deal. And we'll see how it pans out for the Texans. But he's a fantastic player. But hopefully he's worth that first rounder next year. They also drafted Nathaniel Dell, a receiver out of Houston. They still could use receivers, and they really kind of need everything. So they drafted a little bit of everything. They got Henry Toto in the 5th round, another good linebacker out of Alabama. He's a transfer from Tennessee, solid player. Xavier Hutchinson from Iowa State is also a good player. So some solid picks for Houston. I like their draft class. This is all going to really depend on but all this is going to depend on how Will Anderson plays because they gave up so much for Will Anderson. They're going to be so dependent on how he plays because that is going to be huge for the Texans. Because if he absolutely blows in the first season, everyone's gonna see that trade as the worst trade in history. But I don't think that'll happen. I think he'll be very good. But unless he has, rookie of the year season, I still think a lot of people are not going to like that trade. That was a lot that they gave up to go and get Will Anderson. But the Houston Texans' new head coach, D'Amico Ryans, comes from San Francisco, former defensive guy, defensive coordinator for them. He loves his defense, and so getting Will Anderson, people kind of saw that coming. They didn't expect that they'd get both Stroud and Anderson, but that's what they did. And the Texans get their guy at quarterback. And next we have the Tennessee Titans, who uh, many people thought this would be the team that would take Will Levis. And yes, they did take Will Levis, but they took him in the second round, which was pretty nice, if I might add. But with the first round pick, they got Peter Skoronski, a very good lineman out of Northwestern. They kind of need to overhaul the uh, offensive line with a lot of guys leaving. Will Levis was a huge draft pick for them. He can be their next QB after Ryan Tannehill. Of course, uh, why am I forgetting his name? The Liberty quarterback. The Malik Willis experiment did not go so well, as he had to come in as a backup for Ryan Tannehill, and he was so bad that he got benched. They hope that isn't the same case with Will Levis. Tajay Spears drafted with the third round pick. Good running back for Tulane. With Tulane's miraculous season, Spears was a big part of it, so that could be a solid depth guy for the Titans, who are trying to find some way to make their offense not Derrick Henry dependent. They didn't draft a receiver until the seventh round, so Tennessee, they really desperately need receivers. It's like, the Green says that they filled it, but they really didn't fill it. I mean, they drafted it in the seventh round, so I mean, unless you consider a seventh round receiver filling a position of need, they didn't really get that. They didn't really cover that position. So, I'm just saying. But overall, for the Titans, did I forget to grade all these? I think I graded all of them. But for Houston, I give them. Yeah, I think I literally keep forgetting to grade these. Jeez. But for the Jaguars, their draft class, I'll give it a solid B plus. They did a good job. As for the Colts, they got their QB. I'll give them an A minus, and then the Texans, one aggressive. I'll give them an A minus, but that's going to be dependent on how. That'll be solely dependent on how Will Anderson plays. And as for the Titans, they got Will Levis. They got a good running back, and they got a good offensive lineman. So I'll give them an A minus as well. I'm being pretty nice to some of these teams. Next, we'll go to the AFC West, and the first team on here is the Denver Broncos. I'll just start with them as they're in the front here. And their first pick was in the second round. Of course, they went big time aggressive as they gave first and second round picks up to go and get Russell Wilson to finally get their QB. And it cost them, of course, a lot of picks. So their first pick didn't come until the very tail end of the second round, which got them Marvin Mims. They traded up to get Marvin Mims, good receiver from Oklahoma. They also got Drew Sanders, who's a good linebacker from Arkansas. A lot of people expected maybe he could go in the first round. So those were two good picks for them. Really didn't have much else. They didn't have a lot of picks, but Denver's draft class, Top two picks were solid. And of course, they got a new coach. They now have Sean Payton, which is way better than having Nathaniel Hackett. I think Denver is going to be much better this season. Their draft class is okay. I'll give it a B. Uh, they didn't really have many draft picks to work with, so kind of hard to really make many improvements. But they did work with what they have, so solid overall. And then you have the Kansas City Chiefs at with the next one here, and they did okay. They went and got a defensive end in a hometown guy in Felix uh, Andu Anudike Uzama. I forget how you pronounce it. I think it's somewhere close to that, but solid pick in the first round. Then they got Rashee Rice from SMU, a receiver, which they need receivers now with no Juju Smith-Schuster as he went to New England. And then they, of course, just made some draft picks at the end to kind of just take some shots at guys. They're the defending champions. There isn't really much they needed to work on. They can just this is a very good team overall. Tight end's not a need. Why is tight end a need? They realize that they have Travis Kelce, right? How is that a need? I mean, I guess because he's getting older, but how is that a need? Anyways, the Chiefs, I give them I'll give them a B. They didn't really need much, but they did have some decent picks, so good enough. Next, we have the LA Chargers, who actually, that is pretty wild. They did not make a single trade. In an NFL draft that was pretty much littered with trades, they didn't make one. That's surprising to me. So the Chargers didn't make a single trade. They just stayed put with every pick that they had. And their first round pick was Quentin Johnston. They did need another receiver. Keenan Allen has been okay. Mike Williams, they both have had injury problems in the past. Quentin Johnston's a vertical threat. He's also a big-bodied receiver. Very good draft pick for them. They also got Tuli Tuipulotu, the USC defensive guy who was very good for the Trojans. Pretty much the only good defensive player that they had. So good pick there as well in the second round. Then they got a linebacker from Washington State. And they make some other picks, and they take Max Duggan as a. And then they go ahead and take Max Duggan as a depth QB. Nice picks overall. Chargers did a good job. I'll give them a B plus. They got a receiver and they got a good defensive player as well. So overall, I'll give them a B plus. They did a good job. Next, we'll have the Las Vegas Raiders. The Vegas Raiders, I think for once, and you're not going to see this very often with Vegas, because the Raiders have been infamous for making terrible draft picks. This time, they did a great job in the draft. Now, their first round pick was Tyree Wilson, the Texas Tech edge rusher. Personally, I am not a Tyree Wilson fan, but pretty much everybody else is. He's still a good defensive end. I wouldn't take him like top 10, top 20. Well, I don't know about top 20, but I would not take him top 10. But he's still a good defensive end. He'll be a solid player for the Raiders. And then, of course, they traded away Darren Waller, but they got his replacement in Michael Mayer, who was pretty much supposed to be like a top 10, top 15 pick, but instead he falls all the way to the second round, and the Raiders decide, all right, we'll trade up and get him. And that's their second round pick. Outstanding pick for the Raiders. I think Michael Mayer will be an outstanding tight end. This guy can block, he can catch. He's not very fast, but there's a lot of tight ends. There's plenty of tight ends who are in the league that aren't necessarily speed demons, and they have fantastic careers. So I love that pick, in the second round. Great draft pick for the Raiders. And then in the third, they get Byron Young, who's a good defensive guy out of Alabama. And then, really, other than that, they took some shots on guys. They actually took Aiden O'Connell in the fourth round. I don't understand that one. Christopher Smith is a shot in the dark at safety. Georgia. Overall, I love the Michael Mayer pick. Young and Wilson are both okay. I give Vegas an A minus. Overall, they did a good job, and I think they will. And I think they should be happy with what they have. And if I forgot to grade somebody, oh well, I kind of went fast. So that is, sorry guys, that is all for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I will have the NFC coming up next, and until next time, adios everyone.